Welcome back. All right, so the World Cup is beginning in 2 days. I'm torn. Canada's in the World Cup for only the second time in its history. Last time it was in there was 1986. And there's a certain national pride you have seeing your country in the World Cup. The World Cup is so exceedingly difficult for certain countries to get into. So Canada getting in is great, and Alfonso Davies is going to be there, and that's great because without him, Canada doesn't have a lot of hope. In terms of maybe pulling off an upset or two, Davies is really the engine that drives it. That being said, there are some good players. There's the possibility that this could be the first of a few World Cups for Canada. That maybe there's some sustained success, which we didn't have with the one team that made it in the 80s, and some feeling that hey, maybe Canada's really gonna improve and move up the overall ranks in the world, which is good because I used to follow Canadian soccer a lot, and I would see the FIFA rankings and be like, oh, we're 105th. How are we 105th? Oh, we're 102nd. Oh, well, that's good. That's an improvement from 105th. And every now and then go up to like 71st, maybe 68th kind of thing. And so eventually, with all the other sports and everything else to distract me, I just kind of lost touch with where Canada was in terms of the soccer world. But I became aware that they were doing better over the last couple of years, and I started watching a game here and there, and they were enjoyable to watch, and they were winning. And it wasn't a matter of them being a fluke or anything; they were legit winning these games. Now, the problem is the World Cup is run by FIFA. Now, if you haven't watched the documentary on Netflix, the four-part series on FIFA, and the amazing job Sepp Blatter did with overseeing all of it. It is an eye opener. Now I had known a lot of it. I had watched the like John Oliver's takedown of FIFA, where he goes through all of the various scandals. But seeing it plotted out over this, and it's about an hour for each episode. Seeing it plotted out over this basically 4 hour period, where you see how FIFA started out as this organization with good intentions, this organization that just wanted to unite football, right? Slash soccer, right? So they wanted to unite the football world in Europe and have this commonality, and eventually a World Cup emerges in 1930. And I mean, I remember when I started getting into the World Cup part of things, which was for 1990. It's when I really got into it, and I had books on the history of it, and I read through all the books on the history of it. And it's insane to think that this tournament that was a small tournament blew up. And it blew up because of their aggressiveness in securing partners and sponsorships, and yet that seems to be, from when you watch this documentary, where the corruption starts to come into it. And it feels like it's one of those, okay, so we made money over here doing this, how can we make more money? Oh, you want to have the World Cup in that country? That'll cost you, I would say, $1 million, $1.5 million. Then I'll vote for your country to get it. And it does expose how the setup was corrupt. The biggest problem I have is that, so okay, all the scandalous people mostly are taken out, right? But if organized crime, if there's an FBI raid on an organized crime ring, the guys who take over, you're not going to say, man, they're probably really good, upstanding people, right? You're not going to think, wow, that mafia's got a bad name because of Gotti. But once John Gotti was gone, they really cleaned it up. I mean, they do all these home improvement things, and now they've got live it or lose it. Of course, it has to do with your life. But I mean, either way, they're on HGTV, and I mean that's not a thing, right? So it's where I'm torn. I'm torn with the World Cup starting, between watching as much as I'm able to in between hockey games, which, I mean, since it's in Qatar, I'm guessing, or Qatar. I heard it pronounced both ways throughout that whole thing, and I've heard it pronounced both ways. I've always pronounced it Qatar, but Qatar seems to be the one that gets thrown around more. So, although when Sepp Blatter revealed it and looked horrified, he did say Qatar. So Qatar it is. It is interesting to think of how you could wrest it away from FIFA. Like, I love good soccer games. I do. World Cup's fantastic. And when you got country versus country, it's just nothing better. But knowing that FIFA directly benefits from everybody watching it, yeah, see, and that's the thing. I don't believe that FIFA's not corrupt right now. I don't believe that there's not still money exchanging hands, and that they feel that's completely fine, that it's our money, we can do what we want with it, and if we want to grease each other's palms with the money so we get our way, that's fine. If we want to charge a government $10 million, that's fine. If we want to charge the delegation that's coming in to argue that they should get the next World Cup, if we want to charge them $1 million for each member's vote, that's fine. And they don't see a problem with it. I think the thing that I found remarkable was, and I kept saying during the show, they would just matter-of-factly say, yeah, and then I gave him $1 million, and yeah, that happened, and I thought, that's bribery. And they're just shrugging it off and going, it's not bribery. No, he just gave me $1 million, so I would do what he wanted me to do. And I told him I wouldn't do it unless he gave me the money. How is that a bribe? And so you're kind of, it's amazing. And it may very well be that we can't understand that world because we're not in it, right? The executive committee is corrupt. But I think one thing that's really telling is how quickly after the FBI arrests, like, so many people, which is talked about at the start of the documentary. Again, I can't recommend it enough. It's a really good documentary. That's why I wanted to do the video on Star Wars and Marvel and make this its own video, because I think this is a more important topic right now, and it does need to be its own video. But I can't square everything they did and everything that fell apart and the idea that now they're somehow better. Because I don't know how many of them realize. So there's times where somebody will break the law and they'll be like, I got caught. Which doesn't mean they regret what they did. Means they got caught. Means I would probably do this again, but I do it differently. And I kind of got that feeling. Then at the end, Sepp Blatter, they ask him, do you have, and it's not really a spoiler, but to ask him, do you feel responsible? And I said out loud, of course he doesn't. And he kind of answered with, well, I was responsible for the things I did, and if it's FIFA, then it ties back to me. But what those people did is on them. That's not on me. Okay, so no then. You accept no responsibility. Just say no, because you're not accepting any responsibility. And again, the head of FIFA now, there's some discussion about whether or not there's still some quid pro quo, there's some bribery that goes on. And I think we can all expect that there probably is. I feel like the 2026 bid that was won by Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, I think that was to make up for what happened with Russia and Qatar getting back-to-back World Cups. Russia, where they didn't have the infrastructure to support it, they built it. It was a good World Cup there. 2022 in Qatar, a lot of people have died. And the answer from Sepp Blatter on that is, it's not our fault, that's them. And for the people who put in the bid for Qatar, their answer is, well, that's on the government. That's not on us. Oh, and by the way, nothing happened. The government's saying only 3 people died. And we can see in the documentary more coffins than that. So, and they're probably playing with numbers. So, well, that technically wasn't building up for the World Cup. So, and then the other part that I thought was weird was only 3. That still seems like there's more people that died that should have for a World Cup, for a soccer/football tournament. It is a big cash cow. Clearly, Qatar, a company, or Qatar, a company or country with a lot of money, oil money, right? And looking to prove that they can be leaders in the Arab world. I understand completely what Qatar's doing here, or Qatar again, but should they have got that bid in 2022? No. And you can see in that, too, that the expectation was that the UK would get it in 2018, or England would get it in 2018, and the Americans would get it for 2022, which I think would have been perfectly fine. I do, though, also agree that it could be good to give the games to a developing country, to a country that, could definitely benefit from hosting the games. But I think it needs to be the right country. The fact that the tournament's being played in November rather than in the summer, because it's too hot for soccer in the summer, tells you all you need to know, really, about this. That saying, well, we could hold the tournament there. Well, we'd have to make sure it's in the fall so guys won't drop dead on the pitch. Yeah, all right, well, we'll do it in November then. Some red flags there. To me, there are some red flags there. That's really, to me, a major issue. But they gave him the bid. They said, yeah, no, you guys won. And so that to me is problematic. But am I the only one with this dilemma of wanting to watch and see who wins the World Cup? Wanting to follow this as much as possible. Absolutely loving the soccer. Because the game is fantastic. It is the best tournament in the world. It is the reason why when the NHL throws a World Cup, I kind of roll my eyes and go, yeah, this isn't really a World Cup. You didn't have a qualifying round. They're all National Hockey League players. All the money goes to the NHL. This is not the same as a World Cup. The World Cup is all these countries coming together so that certain people in FIFA make a lot of money and the players don't. The Trinidad and Tobago part, my heart broke for those players. Honestly, it did. It broke for those players. I thought that was just criminal how that all played out. And again, I cannot recommend the series enough because it felt like the players for Trinidad and Tobago going to the World Cup were going to be treated quite well, and they really weren't. It is shocking at how little money they made when you know that is a cash cow for everybody who's organizing it, for the countries that are involved, and to not pay the players, it's kind of standard with big league sports. If you go back far enough in almost any sport, you can find a part where the owners treat the players like their property, and they can keep their mouth shut, go do your job, and I'll make all the money. And I don't know that that's necessarily all that it is with FIFA. I think the corruption, like all the mafia comparisons, accurate. They were all comparisons that were accurate. And I don't know that either Sepp Blatter knew all these payoffs were going on, all these handouts were going on, and he turned a blind eye, or he didn't know, which means he's naive and wasn't really the leader. Because if all of this is going on in your organization and you don't know, then you're not really leading because everything's chaotic underneath you. And the fact, too, that they showed, and I really hadn't paid attention at the time, that when he saw that Qatar had won the bid, he was upset. I hadn't picked up on that when that took place because everybody was upset. So I never thought, well, Sepp Blatter, what's his reaction? His reaction was whatever. But no, looking at it now, yeah, you can tell. He's like, oh, crap. Like the Russia bid was one thing. People are going to be mad about Russia because they wanted to go to England. But then when it's Qatar as well, it's like, oh boy. Because, yeah, England brought out David Beckham. That's the big gun. The U.S., they brought in everybody. You had Bill Clinton there. You had whoever there. And Obama was back in the bid. And it went to Qatar. And, yeah, you could just see that this was going to cause problems. But that's where, as the person in charge, it's up to Sepp Blatter to figure out what's gone wrong and fix it. And by the time that FIFA had been cleaned out and they'd realized what a mistake they made, well, Qatar was too far along to take the bid away from them and give it to somebody else. Because there was discussions of that, well, could they move the bid somewhere else? No, they really couldn't at that point because they'd already, I'm guessing there's all kinds of agreements that have been signed. So if you take the bid, you take that World Cup away from Qatar, you give it to, say, the U.S. or you give it to England, you're probably looking at massive lawsuits, a lot of money. So at that point, FIFA had to kind of plug their nose and go with it. I hope it's a really good tournament. I hope that it's not too hot. Again, it's November now, but it is still desert, so you never know. But it should be cooler. It should be... it'll be interesting to see, too, how the ratings work, because at this point in time in North America, NFL's in full swing, the NHL's going, NBA's going, and because of the time of day these games will likely be played, is that going to affect the ratings? And then, of course, from a world perspective, how will the ratings go globally? This is one of the biggest tournaments you could ever imagine. It is watched by, like, 1 billion people every 4 years. And it is just so much fun to watch and to really take in all the games and figure out who you're cheering for. And I wanted to do a video on that, but I felt like I needed to do this first. So before I get into who I'm rooting for in each group, I wanted to talk about this first because I'm torn. And if you've watched the documentary, let me know if you're torn on the topic as well. Let me know your thoughts on FIFA. Because I know that there's a lot of corruption in a lot of sports and a lot of different leagues, but I don't think that that's a good excuse for the kind of criminal activity that was going on in FIFA, and I get the feeling may very well still be going on in FIFA. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And again, I cannot recommend that enough. I really thought, I already know a lot of this. I don't know if I'm going to learn anything. Yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how the hierarchy was formed within FIFA, and I think it had good intentions in the beginning. I even will go this far. I think Sepp Blatter, when he originally became the leader and he wanted to bring football to Africa, I honestly think he did that with the best of intentions, and I think he still believes that his legacy will be as somebody who built up football globally and that he did wonderful things. And I really think that legacy is tarnished beyond all repair. I also will never stop laughing anytime I see that footage of a guy walking up to Blatter while he's doing a press conference saying, yeah, I've got the money for the 2026 North Korea bid. I'm paraphrasing, but money for North, and then Blatter's like, security, and so he just throws the money in the air and says, that's all of it, as we discussed. North Korea 2026. So, once that's out there publicly, it's really, really hard to get away from it. And Blatter ran from that money that was raining down like it wasn't money. But anyways, and I don't think it was real money, but that's not the point. It was a very powerful statement being made, and I thought it was entertaining, and I got it. And I remember getting that at the time. But when you look at it in the context of this whole mini-series, it feels even more poignant at that time. But let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.